So what is hue saturation value? I'm sure, a lot of you have probably heard these words before. If you have not, hue is like a color or a shade. So as you can see here, all the different colors. And then saturation is going to be how intense that color is, whether it's like fully saturated and it's going to hurt your eyes and probably not print very well, or if it's desaturated to the point where it's like black, white, gray. And so value is going to be basically how dark or light it is, like from white to black and all the grays in between. And, even though, when it comes to, making your pieces and coloring them, you might not necessarily use, black, white, and gray. It can be really, helpful to at least view your piece with an adjustment layer, for example, and we'll get into more of that later. Or possibly start your piece out in black, white, and gray and then go into color, because values are really important and that'll make your art a lot better and have your piece be more clear. So yeah, that's why all of these are important, very important for color. And this is an example here with the Mona Lisa. So if we can see, this is with the hues and then the saturation, pigmentation, and intensity, and the value and the brightness and the luminosity. So, as we can see here, for example, with the shadows and the highlights and all the variations of black, white, and gray, the Mona Lisa still looks very recognizable even in black and white and gray. So that's what I meant by if you put an adjustment layer on your piece, you can kind of see if the forms are clear, and if the piece is kind of working well, just testing it out. And then it is also important to have varying saturation and varying hues in the piece. As you can see, there's a lot of different colors that this adjustment layer is picking up, for example. But yeah, so that's just kind of an overview of how these three things work together to make one piece. Then we have contrast.
Yeah, contrasting. Yeah, wait. Hey guys, this is contrast. Just a little bit of background. Contrast basically is kind of the difference between the brightnesses between light and dark and the areas of what your image is. A good example to think about, high contrast, is black and white. You can see it very visible. But when you gain a bit more values on that, you have a bit more shades of gray in there. That's when it has a little bit more nuance to your contrast. Or you can kind of take it a next step and have a bit something called low contrast, which is when you have resulting softer or less dramatic appearances, where it's very subtle contrast. I think there's some ways to really help incorporate your contrast in there. Is definitely space, having your images, having very positive and negative space that can break up that contrast. Color can help that too, by standing out from one another, having some same effects of contrast between positive and negative spaces. There's also shape variations that can help with this. Different types of shapes, number of them can also help the form of contrast too. Another thing that can help with your zine piece is distance with foreground and background can be blurry, helping having a center key point, which is a very important thing about contrast. And then also adding details and textures where you also want that focal point. But yeah, that's contrast for y'all. And here's some examples with that, in a more colorful standpoint, because I did kind of talk about just black and white. But yeah, here's very saturated colors, bright colors, warm colors, cool colors. You have your complementary colors, a square relationship, and also primary relationships. But yeah, they're very cool.
If I may add on to this.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so this is obviously fancy color theory, but honestly my opinion is that all of these relationships are just guidelines for you to be able to get at contrast between colors, because that's the main point, because all colors are what's what I'm trying to say, they're relative, right? So you can see in all of these different shapes, like for example, analogous, they're all close to each other. That would be like a low contrast area. Or you could use a triad of colors, which are all in separate areas, or complementary colors, which like the reason that works so well is because there's already contrast built into the hues. And so those colors, these collections on the right here are all like examples of different ways you can show contrast with just color. And then moving on from there, I will be talking about how you can use layer modes specifically to check your different values and the different aspects of the color. On the left here, we can apply, this should be in most art programs, I think, the saturation mode. If you just fill it with any gray on like the left side of the slider over there, you can check the values pretty easily. Hue is a little more complicated. You'll probably want to merge all of your work onto one layer, but then if you set that layer to hue and then put something under, it'll be able to show you, you know, like this element has a lot of blue, a lot of greens, and then I want you to note that like between all of these examples, even after they've been filtered, you can still see very high contrast on each separate example because like the painter, Monet, has like kept that in mind, like what you want to look at when you're looking at the work from even like far away. And then saturation, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think this is also very important. Same thing applies. You'll like want to merge your work onto one layer and then change the layer mode of that to saturation and then put a layer underneath it and ideally maximize the saturation of that layer. But you can see on the right here that like these little flowers are very highly saturated. The clouds, even though they're very bright on the left here, are very low saturation, so the sky is blue. But even so, you can see that there's like attention being paid to the umbrella and to the figure of the woman and her child. So it's all like, it all is quite a bit to think about, but it works cohesively, like very effectively. So this is just to help you check one thing at a time. Oh yes, curves is kind of something very cool you can do with digital art. This is, I think, just values, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've seen something like this and gotten a little scared of it because I couldn't explain exactly how it works, but it actually makes a lot of sense if you just like go and play with it. If you would move to the next slide. So we will be using the same painting as an example. On the top there is like the original thing that pops up when you change the curves. And basically it's like a histogram of the different values on the piece. So for example, I adjust this to the highest point and then the final curve after you apply it, you can see that everything's shifted a little bit higher. So we have more pixels on the screen that are like at a brighter level. So this tool is really helpful if you want to increase overall contrast, because if you think about it logically, you can take like these pixels that are already bright and make them brighter by moving it up, and then take these that are already dark and move it lower, if that makes sense, or the other way around. And again, it looks kind of complicated, but it's quite intuitive if you go in and play with it. And this is another example this is a picture that I took of my dog. And then you can see that like visually it's pretty dark, and then statistically, I guess, you can see that representation because there's a lot of pixels in the dark area on the left. And then I just adjusted it by lifting like the little thing, and then that it ended up kind of readjusting the distribution of the different points. And this is a lot like easier to look at because the contrast has more balanced.
Okay, and then we have gradient maps. So these are kind of like basically like an adjustment layer to change the color of your art, and you can use it whether you're going from a piece that's already colored or a piece that is in grayscale if you want to take it into color or test out like different color combinations without like, you know, going in and manually doing it yourself. And a lot of programs have, as you can see here, like preset gradients, but you can also make your own. Let's see. I've just put some examples. This was a charm design that I made a while ago, and so I just made it in grayscale, and I used like an adjustment layer. I think they have them in Photoshop, but they should have them in like Procreate and Clip Studio Paint, because basically all I did to get the grayscale was to just like take the saturation completely out of it. And you can also, like, if you need like higher contrast, because this design's a little bit weird, so some parts of it are kind of hard to see in black and white. You can also like adjust the contrast as well. So for these, I just used like different gradients and adjusted it to the point where the features and like the elements of the design were still recognizable, just to test out some different color combinations. Like if I wanted to, I didn't necessarily want to like manually color it, or I was looking for like a different color combination. And then this is in Clip Studio Paint, and this next one's in Procreate. So basically, like, the only reason they're different is because I just chose different colors, but you can do them in all programs. And I feel like the advantage of doing this is like, you know, checking the values of your piece like with the grayscale, and that's like why I think it's beneficial to like start in grayscale as well, so like your image is like readable, and the like nothing is getting like too like muddy or like blended together and stuff like that. So that's like, this is a way of like applying everything else we talked about before, using the grading maps. But yeah, this is the end of our slides. But if anyone would like a demo, anybody like Procreate or Clip Studio Paint?
I would like a demo.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we have any questions?
Oh yeah, questions. I guess you guys are experts. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I have a question for you too. Do you ever start your pieces in black and white and gray? Anyone?
Nuh-uh.
Anyone?
No one?
It's really
Sometimes.
it's
It's helpful for like drafting things out, I would say. Or like thumbnailing.
So when you start in gray and you use the gradient,
Mm-hmm.
that's how you add color. How do you get like skin art? Is this if you do like a custom gradient map?
It can kind of, I mean, yeah, that's a good question, because basically, like, you know, some of them are a little more close to like skin tone than others. I would say it is definitely not the only way. I would say for me, it's more of like testing out certain colors, because you can also do a color layer, and I can show this on my iPad. I think it should be able to plug in here, where you are going from grayscale, but you aren't necessarily like doing a gradient map.
It also doesn't have to be the final step.
Yeah.
You can always apply the gradient map and then, you know, merge it down,
Yeah.
and then be like, I want the skin
Yeah.
color to be this
Mhm.
design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stop the
okay.
Zoom one if you
Okay.
can. I can.
Yeah. So this is a piece, a work in progress of mine. So this is like what it looks like. I've just been doing it in grayscale because I wanted to kind of just challenge myself to do that, and kind of like experiment, because I wasn't sure what color I really wanted it to be. So that's kind of like why I started, and I wanted to like the values to be strong. So this is like a color layer, and it's kind of like a gradient map, but it's basically like just applying the color onto my thing. So like, say if I only wanted like the hair to be in like this like light purple color, but I wanted like the skin to be like brown, I could do, well, this is kind of like a reddish brown, honestly, not really that brown, but it's a little desaturated. So it's not like a perfect fix, but basically that's like a way to do it if you wanted to do like specifically like skin tone, so it's not like but yeah, because I don't think gradient maps, they don't have to be the final thing. Like as Elaine said, you can just like apply the gradient map and like paint over it, or you could do a color layer like this where you're selecting like different colors.
Is that like a regular layer with the opacity turned down?
It's like one of these layer modes in, so basically like this is what the layer actually looks like, and then when I put it to color, it's kind of like functioning like actually let me see, kind of functions like a clipping mask, and it only like is like applying the color to what I've already put down instead of adding another like layer on top of it, if that makes sense. Kind of like an overlay layer. But yeah. And I'm assuming, I would guess that there's probably similar layers in Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint as well. But yeah, so that's one way if you want it to be like different colors. Or you can like make your own gradient and kind of tweak it. So where like the color of their skin is like a skin tone. But yeah.
And also to clarify, the like gradient. Oh, no, you're good. The gradient map. It's like the gradient comes from kind of the value slider. So when you make a gradient map, I don't know if you could pull one like up or something, or use a like pre-made one. It's basically looking at every like value from like 0 to 255 on the grayscale layer, and then each one of those gets like a different color. So that's why it's like a good way if you want to do the one on the right that's like multiple colors.
This one?
On the right, so you can see there's multiple hues happening with the gradient map, even though like if you think about the black and white, that's like 2 dimensions of color. It's kind of adding extra dimensionality to that. So that's why it can be really like effective as a quick way to like see your vision on the piece.
So is the left applies to the darkest colors and the right applies to the lightest?
I think generally.
Makes sense to me.
No, sometimes it's hard. Like when I was testing these out, I had to do like a reverse a lot of them because it would like do like the dark as light and the light as dark. But yeah. You can move these around and you can like delete them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make your own stuff. And you can do this in Clip Studio Paint, Photoshop, and Procreate. And like for me, it's like, if I was like doing this, like, oh, I like this, like maybe I'll like color pick this and like, I don't know, paint over it. Actually, like add more, make more contrast or something. They use that as like kind of like a base to start like really coloring on top of.
Yay! Thank you for the demo.
Yes.
Yeah, Althea. Do it for Althea, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Any suggestions? Anything else you are curious about? Yeah.
I think this question was technically answered, but it's like, so I'm trying to think how to word this. Like, in terms of like layers for, I guess, face, hair, clothes. I guess would the gradient layer, like, can those just be on those layers, or would you have to kind of just combine all the layers and then
I'm fairly certain, at least in Clip Studio, which is what I use, you can just it counts as an editing layer. You can clip that onto each layer independently. And I feel like that's like functionality that should be in Photoshop and whatnot.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what I typically do, I think, is apply it to like a merged layer of everything. I don't, but yeah.
I just copy the canvas usually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what I do,
just
too.
the whole thing.
yeah.
But if you want to apply it to just like skin tone, you can
Yeah.
just do it individually. something.
Definitely, yeah. You can apply it to individual layers. What I do, yeah, like same thing. I duplicate the file, or like I like merge all the layers. I like copy all the layers and merge them, and then I still have the copies left if I want to go back.
You could also lasso whatever you want to do in a specific area.
That's true. Wait.
Yeah. What about the masking layer?
Wait. How do you do that?
Your work setup is not how I have mine set up.
Well, you know. Oh, you can do that. That's kind of cool.
That's what I usually do.
Wow, I learned something new. I've never done that. Yeah.
Is that, can you do that on Procreate too? Or you
can.
Whoa.
Ooh, okay.
I love doing it on Procreate.
Yeah.
But I always keep like my original work, like obviously I copy it, but I always like keep that one for if I mess up or want to try again.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Or perfect.
All the questions have been answered.
What's your favorite color, Althea?
Periwinkle.
What's everyone's favorite color? Yellow. I don't want to hear
Pink?
Yeah.
Oh my god, so girly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for like, I don't know, like choosing colors? Like what is your, I don't know if you guys already explained this. If you did, I'm sorry, but what is usually your process for like how you decide what colors to use?
That is a good question. Usually starts off Bella.
Okay. Yeah, Anna, I can start off on your amazing question. Me personally, I think I'm quite bad at color, but I do start with color. And usually I'm like, damn, like usually my issue is that everything is a little desaturated when I'm like just like eyeballing it, which I try and eyeball everything at first and like get the colors that I think make most sense there. And then I use like curves and gradient maps as a tool to kind of like fix up those areas of like, also I use like brightness and like, I always think like it's a little bit darker than I want it to be. But I just tweak it a lot.
Yeah.
I think that what's really nice about digital art is you can kind of start with like anything. So I just like usually throw colors onto the page and then like, you know, sculpt something out of it. But then after that, you can lasso whatever. You can put your like layer modes on. You can apply all these things we just talked about at any time forever. And it doesn't even have to be permanent. You know, you can try something out and then delete that layer. So it's a very like explorative process, I think. Yes.
Let's say on the line of that, how do you pick skin tones? That might be a little bit out of the range of what we're doing today. But
How to pick skin tones.
I feel like mine are always like desaturated and gray.
That's definitely. Could you open like the hue saturation value filter? So a really easy way to just like after you have flats on, wait, put like one color on there first. I think you need something to like work with.
Oh, like a...
Yeah. Hold on.
Like this.
I like never know. Like I go into like a orange and then it's
Yeah. So there's this editing function. You can select like magic wand this area, or like if you have it on a separate layer, you know, have that layer and then open this like editing file and kind of mess with all the sliders until you get something you're happy with. Because I know it's very hard to just like go onto the color wheel and suddenly choose something that's perfect. But I think it's a process that like has a lot of live feedback. So you're like looking at it, you're like, what works well here, you know?
On the topic of skin tone, I would say what I do is I look at a combination of like references of real people that I'm like trying to like who am I trying to draw, like for if my character has like darker skin, I'll like look at like pictures of people with darker skin, and also like art of it as well, just to like see like how different it looks from like a real picture from art, because I do think that like specifically like for darker skin tones, a lot of times they tend to get desaturated, like just because like if you're like using like color picker, it tends to like come out that way. But yeah, I think that's what I tend to do. And I guess when you're doing it traditionally, you would mix like more of like warm colors in there. So yeah.
Oh, on that note, I think like a more painterly perspective, you can think about it as like painters, like when they're making most skin tones, it's red and yellow and black and white they use to create the different shades of tones for skin. So you can definitely start out there if you have a more like valued approach that you paint. But that's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, like for example, like and this is gonna look a little bit different because it's like a color layer and not like I'm not actually like coloring it, but like for example, like if you're doing like a brown, like you could do either like a red toned like or orange or yellow, so it's gonna look like different depending on like what, oh my god, so brush, it'll look different depending on like what like base color you use, like on the color slider. So like those look slightly different. Obviously it would look, and if you make this like a normal layer, so they're slightly different. But yeah, I think like making sure like you go like this side in like this area so it's like still saturated, at least for me, kind of gives the effect of like more of like traditional paint where you mix the red and the yellow and all that stuff. But yeah, I hope that was somewhat helpful. Yeah. Oh, I never answered how I pick colors. That's a great question. There's some apps that I've used before that like generate color palettes. Like I think it's called Coolers. And you basically like, I think it generates like 5 or 6 color palettes, and sometimes, and you can like lock the colors if you want like specific color, and it like generates random palettes. And I think sometimes I like to look at like photography or other people's art like on Pinterest and kind of just like get inspiration from that as well. But yeah, I think it's like, especially if like you're creating like an original character or like an original piece where you don't have like necessarily like oh, if I'm making fan art of like, I don't know, Naruto, like I have the color reference to pull up like, oh, like these are the colors from that character. Like if you're making an original character, I think it's okay to like go through multiple rounds of like developing that character and changing the colors, because I feel like that's like how I've tended to make my characters, because sometimes with time you get new ideas.
Spinning bars.
Yep. But yeah. Yes. Yeah. Any other questions, or are you guys sick of us? Thank you. Okay, now.
Oh wait.
Yep.
No.
No.
I'm just gonna keep yapping. In terms of like, I know that like background always has a really big impact on, or like the background color that you like use has a really big impact on like the way that you perceive the colors that you're using as well, because of all the color theory stuff. What like kind of background do you guys usually start out with, or does it like depend on the kind of piece, and like what kind of pieces have you made where you have certain background colors, like, you know, like underpainting?
Yeah,
like stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm that's what I'm
yeah
like,
no yeah
I don't know if you guys do that at all. Do you have any recommendations for like specific colors? Specific palettes?
I would say that's a good question. I don't have a ton of experience personally with doing like underpainting techniques for digital. I've definitely done it when like traditionally painting. A good artist, I think, to learn from in that sense is James Gurney. I feel like a lot of people have probably heard of him. He has the Color and Light book, and he does a lot of painting in gouache, but I think his techniques are really really useful to learn from, even if you're doing digital, because, you know, you're still like taking those traditional techniques and applying them in the digital sense. Background color. I tend to use a gray or white background, but I definitely change it depending on like what I'm thinking the final piece is gonna do. Sometimes I just do like gray, so it's like not as hard on my eyes when I'm drawing, and a lot of times I like sketch in red to begin with. But yeah, I would say that don't do a lot of underpainting, but I definitely like change the background color, and I think that can be helpful because it definitely changes the look of your piece. But yeah, what about you, Bella? I don't know. Two guys who don't know. But Elaine knows.
I know a little. I'm like trying to figure out how to. Do you mind if I connect my thing to the projection? So.
Is there any way you could record this? Just like,
I could join the Zoom call.
He's got into an assistance.
Alright, we need our tech guy back.
Let me see if I can give you the Zoom link.
Okay, yeah.
I can record you.
I'll record you over your shoulder.
Wait, I'm like shy.
It's okay.
I'm a little shy. Let's not broadcast my Discord.
I'll send you that. I'll put the link in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get into underpainting because it is like seriously such a
It's
good
very
thing.
fun.
It's very fun, and it's super useful for traditional art. Yeah, that's like one thing about digital that I'm a little mystified by is like paint mixing. But you know what? I'm sure I could learn. I'll let you in, Elaine.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and then do I do anything? or-
Yes.
Should be recording on Althea's computer too.
It is recording on mine.
Awesome. You're gonna have to do some crazy editing after this. Sorry.
Oh, I'm so excited.
But
Elaine, you probably want to share your screen. On the
Oh.
Zoom.
yeah,
Right.
let me know if you can share.
How do I do that?
Like going through your pages. Yeah. You can use these few moments to mess around with gradient maps
Would you want to
and stuff like that.
Wait, I'll.
The strugglers. Okay, don't worry guys. We got this. So, this is kind of how I approached like all the color stuff. By which I mean I started with this reference image that I like wanted to do. So actually, you can see here I usually have this saturation layer on. So it's like that's the difference between having all the hues there and having just the values. But like something I always try to strive for is to still like have that like really clear contrast so you can tell where I want you to look. But yeah, I have a bunch of different layer modes on that kind of like add hue variety, I guess is how I would say. And then obviously the background being there originally, I don't think I had this red layer on, but like it makes a big difference in terms of both the value and the effect it gives. So then after I did that, I'm like, oh wow, wait, I could do something with this. And I started painting over it, which is like thinking really big picture, I guess. You're looking at the values still, you're looking at the composition, and it's just like, yeah. And then I kind of refined that idea, and here I actually use like a curve. So I made the dark parts like darker. So I think that is really effective in like creating more cohesion for the piece. And then again, having this background here is definitely very helpful. It kind of like, you can see it kind of bleeds through here. So that's kind of the effect of the underpainting, where you have like an underlying kind of effect. If you do paint, that is, that kind of, it like ties everything together. It kind of has that unity to it. So yeah, I'm still working on this. I like just started rendering, so that's not very helpful. But in terms of like why all of this is important, I would say I apply like the saturation stuff. You can see the values. You can see like clear contrast between foreground and background. And then there's the underpainting as well. So yes.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us for like an hour. That was kind of a long time. But for me, it was like, went by in the blink of an eye because I was having so much fun. You better keep this in the recording, Mari.
Yeah.
Wait, this is your phone.
Oh, was it done?
Or-
Any last questions or queries? No?
Too late for that. No, I'm just kidding. You can always ask questions to us, and you can even ask them in the Discord too.